everybody is so sort of hyper focused on achievement that there's enormous pressure to choose your direction and stick with that and specialize and never waver. And I think that, at least for me, that isn't really a feasible model. That led to a lot of burnout, basically. I mean, in life, your interests are going to change. I think wondering is good for the soul. I think that's where a lot of really great innovation comes from, is allowing yourself to wonder.
Hi, I'm Nathan Toops, and this is the Functionally Imperative Podcast. This is a show dedicated to conversations with Autotelic creatives. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi defines Autotelics as internally driven, deeply creative people who exhibit a sense of purpose and curiosity in their work. In this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Thomas Burns. I first came across his work in his YouTube video, The Coolest Robot I've Ever Built, when it went viral in summer of 2023. Thomas is a senior hardware engineer on staff at the Manning College of Information and Computer Sciences at UMass Amherst. I really enjoyed his perspective on creativity, wandering, and finding your own path. You might notice a change in scenery in this. I was traveling for work and recorded this from my hotel room. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Thomas, it's so nice having you on the podcast. So I want to jump right into it. I like having these sort of icebreaker questions. Around 9 months ago, you had this really amazing video that I think captured the imagination of a lot of people about the coolest robot you've ever built. I know it captured my imagination. There's like a playfulness to it and a production quality that I think just really, I saw a lot of work that went into it. Can you share what initially sparked like the inspiration for this video and maybe how you navigated the journey from, concept to creation?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks for saying that. I had no idea that the video would have the response that it's gotten. So it's very flattering. And I'm honored to have so many people have seen that project. I've been tinkering on my own with electronics for a while now, and was interested sort of from afar, interested in a couple different things that came together for that project. One, of course, was animatronics. Another was largely analog electronics, such as an old CRT television. I do kind of obsessed with CRT televisions. I do a lot of tinkering on those. And then also, what at the time was sort of the top tier interactive platform, which was Amazon Alexa, which was just a virtual assistant. And over the course of the project, ChatGPT dropped. And of course, that opened an entirely new door. And all of a sudden, Amazon Alexa is nothing compared to a large language model. But, you find yourself in a position where you're halfway through a project. Do I drop everything and recalibrate and go with the new language model, or do I push it through? And I decided that it's best to finish the project, and then you can always upgrade, because it was always thought of as a prototype. But it all comes down to a central idea. And that idea was that most of the technology that I interact with is not particularly inspiring to interact with. I don't want to interact with it. Even Amazon Alexa, I have it set timers in the kitchen and ask it maybe what the weather is, things like that.
Right.
But so I was a little disappointed that after all this developments, um, the the device that I was interacting with was just a small black hockey puck. And I wanted something more than that. And I think what inspired that was all the movies that my generation grew up watching in the 80s and 90s of robots that had a lot more personality. And I realized that there was something really charming and endearing about robots like that. Even the robots that were bad guys were still really interesting. They still had personality. And so the goal became, can I build a robot that is interactive, that behaves as if it has personality? And it was a lot of work. There were a lot of missteps along the way, but it yeah, it came together in the end. And from a video production standpoint, it was one of those stories that sort of the stars aligned on. I was in an interesting place building it. I had access to interesting parts. I had access to the video production tools that I needed at the time to make it look the way I wanted. And so I, in a lot of ways, I got lucky.
That's really cool. I could tell. It's funny. I actually have a history in film post production. It was one of the first jobs I had after college was doing dialogue editing, and when I saw your video, I knew how much work and craftsmanship went into that. Um, what is your background in film and in production in that area? Because you obviously have had interaction there.
I worked for about 20 years in the motion picture industry. I trained for about 10 years to become a director of photography on the sets of a lot of nonfiction projects, but also sets of large feature films and television that you've probably seen, and lots of commercials and music videos and things like that. Worked for a few years as a director of photography, then began directing work, primarily, again, nonfiction, but also some commercial work mixed in, a little bit of installation work. And then the last job I had in the movie business, I was working as a creative director at an organization that was putting out a lot of nonfiction content. I had actually been hired to help them make their nonfiction content, their documentary content, more, for lack of a better word, cinematic. And but I was sort of reaching the end. My interests had kind of changed in professionally and in life, and I around that time also discovered electronics. And when I discovered electronics, it was like this light bulb went on, like a door to an entirely new creative universe had opened.
Wow.
And I immediately pivoted because it was so rewarding to work with electronics. There was so much to learn and so much you could do and such a great community online. And so I pivoted. And, when it comes to making a video like that, I guess those 20 years help a bit.
Wow. Yeah. That's really neat. I know that this journey, did it always feel like you were focused, or did it feel meandering at times? I know from personal
Oh, of
experience
course you meander.
that
I wouldn't say meander, though. I would say the word is you are wondering. Wondering
cool.
with a A, right? You're wondering. Meandering, wondering, I think, is a beautiful concept, because you are putting yourself in a position where you are not searching so much as making yourself available to new discovery, both in yourself and discovering other things. And I think that's really valuable in life. I know, especially in the States, where I moved back here last year, everybody is so sort of hyper focused on achievement that there's enormous pressure to choose your direction and stick with that and specialize and never waver. And I think that, at least for me, that isn't really a feasible model. That led to a lot of burnout, basically. I mean, in life, your interests are going to change. I think wondering is good for the soul. I think that's where a lot of really great innovation comes from, is allowing yourself to wonder.
I love that. Giving yourself space. I mean, some of this is maybe a similar, I guess, a similar journey. I also lived abroad for a few years, and I cherish the moments that it changed how I thought about myself. It changed how I thought about what it meant to be like an American, even, and my relationship with work and the identity around that. I would love to know more about your wandering process. I love that's a beautiful way of stating it. So, give me an example of something that I guess looking back makes perfect sense. But at the moment, maybe you just let yourself wander.
An example of when I let myself wander.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of, I spent all those years in the motion picture industry, and that requires a lot of sacrifice. I'm not sure that the broader public understands how much work goes into making good content out there. And, it's an enormous amount of professional and personal sacrifice to sort of advance through any creative field, but particularly that field. Just on the surface, if you work in television, you're regularly working probably 70 or 80-hour weeks, week in and week out. And that can be really difficult to allow yourself to explore other hobbies or travel or allocate the time you need for yourself to grow, for your soul to grow as a person. Um, so I was reaching a point where I was starting to be interested in other things. I, then the question becomes, well, how do you navigate a professional pivot like that? Because what I do now, electronics, isn't even media adjacent, really, right? It's pretty different. I mean, the YouTube stuff is, of course, but that's sort of a small part of what I do. And it's scary. It's scary anytime you see something you want to be doing that is not the thing you've been doing for a long time. It's not the thing that you've built over so many years. You've built this career, and it's really difficult to take a blind step off that cliff and believe that you are going to land okay. And that's even more difficult if you've got financial obligations, or you've got kids, or the industry that you're moving into is unstable or something like that. But I think that actually in Russian, there's a really great quote that says, he who does not take risks will never drink champagne. And I think that's actually really, I think that's really beautiful in a way, because there is no success and there is no big growth without risk and without failure along the way. It's just not possible, I don't think. So I understand that risk isn't for everybody. I probably have I'm probably less risk averse professionally than a lot of people. And, that comes with sacrifice also. But I think that you have to be willing to listen to what really drives you and pursue that. You have to, if you're curious about something, you have to nurture that curiosity. You have to feed it. If you don't feed it, it will wither. It will atrophy.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. You spoke about taking risks, and I know that we all have to make these calculations, but do you have any patterns or rituals around trying to make sure to make enough room for those like sort of calculated risks, or is there any?
Oh, there's no roadmap. At least I've never found a roadmap. I wish there was a roadmap. I wish there was a toolkit I could pay for online. Buy this toolkit for $99 and it will help you navigate change and risk.
Yeah.
I haven't found it. If it's out there, I hope somebody will let me know, because I would love that. That's what makes it so scary, is that it's unknown. You're stepping into the void. You have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea if you're going to land on your feet. You have no idea if you're going to have a steady paycheck in 12 months' time. You have no idea if it's going to crash and burn, or you're going to succeed, or it crashes and burns and you're able to push through that until you get to a point where you're doing what you want. It's a really scary thing.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Absolutely.
It's terrifying.
I remember when my wife and I decided that we wanted to move to Costa Rica. We had a 1.5-year-old baby.
There you go. You've done it.
Yeah. And I remember I made this checklist, and I was like, here's this big set of if-thens. And I was like, if we can sell the house, and I can find some remote consulting work, and I made this huge list of like qualifications of why we couldn't do it. And as soon as I made it, I was like, I think I can take steps towards doing this. And like we just kept getting through the list of like what I thought was absurd things, and they kept unblocking. And I was like,
Right.
oh, we're going to go to Costa Rica. Like it was,
Oh, well done. Yeah.
yeah.
You handled it really well, I think.
yeah, but it was one of those things where I felt like a mix of luck, and I think sometimes we have to give ourselves permission to have those crazy ideas, or what seems like from the outside it looks crazy, and when I'm inside of it, I'm like, it this was the perfect next step for us, right? Like I look back on it and I'm like, this was great. It accomplished a lot. I learned a lot about myself, and our family got a lot closer. Um, but it was a risk, right? I mean, I remember having friends who thought we were nuts, right? Especially moving a baby with
Oh,
us.
yeah. Same. I lost a lot of, people don't even think, I mean, yeah, go on. I have a lot of thoughts on that. Keep
No,
going. This is a great story.
Yeah, no, I would love it. Yeah, so it was one of those things where I felt felt happy that I gave myself permission, I guess, right? I think sometimes it's these self-limiting beliefs that will stop
That's
us.
right.
But I'd love to hear, yeah, your journey there too.
Well, I think the thing that I didn't, the thing that always surprises me when you start a new direction or new change or you take a big risk in life is that the bigger that thing is that you're trying to accomplish, um, the more resistance you're going to see from the people around you, not everybody, and sometimes from even your closest people. And I've been studying this for a while. Like so when I moved, I've spent about half my adult life in Eastern Europe,
Wow.
mostly the former countries of the former Soviet Union. And I decided to move back there. I had lived there a number of years before, but I decided to move back there in 2014 and leave Los Angeles, where I've been working. And almost all of my friends thought I was just crazy. And I was like, guys, the things that are really most important to me right now in life, community was very high on that list. Being around other creative professionals who had an entirely different frame of reference for storytelling, that was high on the list. Um, they just thought I was, a lot of them, not all of them. Some of them really cheered me on, but not everybody is gonna. You can't pay attention to that. Basically,
Right.
you have to be okay with knowing that this is something you want to do. And what's the worst case scenario for you? What's the worst case scenario after Costa Rica? You come back to the States, and kind of pick up where you left off.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we got with this too. Is like, we could be wrong, come back, tail between the legs, and just be like, you know what? At least we tried it, right? And instead we learned so much about ourselves. And I had a friend. I remember when I was in like, I was a college graduate, so I was in my early 20s. And my friend, she had lived in France for a little while. She was studying culinary arts in France. And she's the one who first planted that seed that she said, you won't learn what's unique about you as an American until you've lived somewhere else. And then you go,
So true.
And
So
exactly.
true.
And it took me years, right? I was in my 30s before I went to Costa Rica. And yeah. And when we moved back to the United States, I was like, we were a little apprehensive about it because we said, I felt like we were plugging back into the matrix. It's like we had like unhooked and then we came back and we're like, okay, but you kind of get this sort of third person perspective where you're like, I'm going to choose to participate in the United States this way, and I'm going to choose to not continue to participate this other way. At least that's how we kind of look at it.
No, I agree with that. Coming back actually is way more challenging, I think, I knew it was going to be challenging, but it's been far more challenging on a sort of a spiritual level. But there is that delicious period depends how long you've been gone, but a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months, whatever, where you can view your own country through the eyes of a foreigner. And it is like somebody gives you this injection of wisdom into your arm, and you have like total perspective on the good and the bad and what you want out of life here. And eventually, as you readapt, that kind of fades away. And at least that's been my experience.
Yep.
But for that small period of time, it's a pretty magical feeling.
Yeah, I didn't think of it till just now, but I'm from a small town. I grew up in a small town in like South Louisiana, and in a weird way, even that is, it's very insular. Most people stay, and we left. We were the crazy ones to go to Texas, right? Which is not that far in the grand scheme of things. And we come back and visit, and I'd be like, oh yeah, this is what everybody's riled up about, or like this is what life is for everyone.
Right.
And so yeah, it was very interesting to those sometimes you have to you go outside to become an outsider, and then I guess you reacclimate, right? That's really interesting.
And how did Costa Rica change you? What do you see as the big areas of growth for you and your family?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, it was to be in a society that was structured a bit different. Family is very important in Costa Rica, and there's a pace to life. And I think some people who try to move there, um, they can't handle it. Like there's two sides to the coin in Costa Rica, which is uh, some things in life are just like less reliable. Like if somebody tells you that maybe they're going to come and repair something and they'll tell you they'll be there tomorrow, they might not. And so to an American, they might get really riled up and be like, oh, they told me that they were going to do this. And like, how, this is, you have to do what they say. But at the same time, everything's very easygoing, right? And so life just happens. It's this like, it's much more relaxed. And if you realize that you get the unreliability and the relaxed life because of the same motivations, and you can just take it and just go, you know what? They'll get here when they get here. Like eventually this will happen. If you understand why that's actually like wonderful, it's an amazing place to live. All the benefits that come from that, of having a more easygoing life and taking things less seriously, is really, really nice. And I think I've become a lot more empathetic for, the things that I have control over, and then not getting riled up about the things I don't have control over. And I think that was a huge thing for me. It was a big growth moment. Yeah,
all of that rings. That really resonates with me. I had a very similar experience.
Yeah. Also, my wife fell in love with surfing. I thought I was going to fall in love with surfing. This was a surprising thing. I grew up skateboarding and loving board sports, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be the surfer, right? Like, obviously. And then I didn't get the bug. I like it. It's fun. But folks who get into surfing, or I guess really any passion like this, and I think we know this is from tinkering, there's this feedback loop, and you're compelled, right? You're compelled to do it. And any extra moment she had, she would go surfing. She'd think about it. She would work on her skills.
Oh, that's really beautiful.
And so I think a part of her is still there. Like we still go to visit Costa Rica, and we would love to be in a spot where we can be, in a surf community again. But yeah, I loved seeing that in her, and I think that opened up something which is beautiful, right? Like when you see your partner get inspired, it's inspiring itself. So
yeah, it's a beautiful thing when anybody finds something that they love that much.
Yes, absolutely.
And what I try to do with my kids is anytime there's the least bit of interest in anything, I want to feed that. Because, if you can find something that you love, especially at a young age where you're doing it your entire life, that is truly exceptional. That's a really beautiful thing. I think that our, at least American culture, American society, in a lot of ways, kind of talks a lot of people out of that.
Yeah.
No, you should be focusing on X, Y, and Z. You should be focusing on your 401k. Which is good. You should be focusing on plans for the future. But I think that anytime there's a glimmer of inspiration from something, you've got to throw yourself into it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're right. Like there's the calculated risk piece. But I keep finding that you can get good at having these calculated risks be low cost if you're wrong, right? Like I like finding those little feedback loops where I'm like, I try it and maybe I fail a bunch of times, but then one of them kind of does the loon shot thing, or like, oh, there's something here. I'm
Right.
trying to do this with my daughter as well. Like my daughter is 8 years old, and you know, just taking those risks, looking for where that passion is, that feedback loop. Uh, it's so important. Yeah, it really is. It's so important.
I mean, I think we also sort of exaggerate what the downside is to a lot of these risks in life. There's only a handful of things you can do in life that would have catastrophic effects on the rest of your life. And they are, the usual stuff. uh, Whatever, substance abuse, for example.
Right.
Um, but usually the the actual worst case scenario is not nearly as scary than we think it is. You going to Costa Rica, for example, like, what if, when I went overseas, it was like, well, what if I get there and it doesn't work out? What if I get there and I'm unhappy? What if I get there and I'm just not making enough money to sort of survive? That all seems really scary. But at the end of the day, if that happens, you either find a way or you come home and regroup and look forward. It's just not, I just don't think it's as scary as people think it is, as I thought it
Right.
was, for example.
Yep. Same. I was in the same exact spot where, uh, yeah, it's been really fun to actually challenge myself, to do these kind of things. So this is good. I think this actually leads into a question I would love to ask you as well, which is there a piece of conventional wisdom that you've bet against?
That I what?
That you've bet against? Is there like something conventional wisdom that you've bet against and it's worked out for you?
Oh, what a great question. Well, not specifically one piece of wisdom, but I do think that it's really important that people understand that they, um, they are the pilot of their ship, and everyone has the power to choose the direction that that ship is going to go in. And so there are all these sort of um, conventional wisdom from a professional standpoint, where there's these steps you take, and you start a career, then you do this, then you do this, and I really think that it's super important for people to find their own path, and a lot of times that means ignoring the conventional wisdom about what that established path forward is. Um, you know, People told me if you leave Los Angeles, you're never really going to work in media production again. Well, that wasn't true. People told me, oh, if you leave that field, um, you know, at your age, Thomas, you're never going to be able to start a new career. Well, that wasn't true. And I think that it's really important that people, wisdom is important. It's important to listen to everybody. But I think at the end of the day, what's way more important is that you find the way that works for you. And that is probably going to require more failure than following a conventional path, but the rewards are going to be um, much more impressive.
Yeah, I love that.
But
So,
you also might always be an outsider. Like I have, for most of my career, felt like a bit of an outsider. And for a long time, that bothered me because people who are on the inside sort of give a lot of side eye to the people who are outsiders. But you can't really do great things by following all the rules.
I love
You need to
that.
kind of make your own rules. And as long as you're not hurting anybody, I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah, I I've had this conversation in my day job. I'm a platform engineer. I do cloud computing stuff, and a lot of times we're balancing the thing, what I like to call the laws of physics versus like the self-imposed rules. Right, the laws of physics are non-negotiable. Like the rate upon which gravity accelerates. Like you can't say I just want gravity to slow down. I can't. There's nothing I can do about that. But most of the other things the rules and restrictions that we have, are actually constructs, right? Like they're convention or they're, common wisdom. And sometimes you can break those. And it's really powerful when you realize like, oh, this is a self-imposed limitation. Um, I like the outsider piece that you're talking about here. So so you said that you meant that, sometimes you felt uncomfortable or you had in the past. What is your relationship to being an outsider now? Like, how do you feel? Um, do you feel empowered by being an outsider, or is this still something that you struggle with?
Well, it's who I am. I don't struggle with it. I mean, when you're in high school and middle school, of course, you struggle with it because the social landscape of your life is much more important and it's unformed and it's very sort of tumultuous and teenagers can be mean and things like that. But as you get older, I think you get more comfortable with who you are and what you want, and you reach a point where you stop caring what other people think. And so now my path works for me, and I think it also works for the people I interact with.
Yeah.
And I will say that I think the most important skill here, especially with collaboration, if you're going to be coming in from the outside, or if you're going to be breaking rules or shaking up norms or something like that, I do think that there's a bit of a learning curve and to learning how to do that productively in a collaborative environment, especially an institutional environment. You go into a new company that's big, or you go into where I work, which is academia. I work at a large research university. And anytime you're dealing with a lot of sort of stakeholders in the room, that doesn't mean you have to stop being who you are. I think that it means you have to look for those ways where you can, be who you are in a way that's productive for everybody. If you're kind of coming in from the outside again, I do think it's possible. I think in some fields it's maybe less possible.
Right.
There are some corners of corporate America that seem to me from the outside to have some pretty strict rules. But I always think there's room to improvise and shake things up and look at it from a new perspective. You just have to learn, I think, in each situation how to navigate those waters because they're not always calm waters. Does that answer your question?
No, that's great. That's great. And this leads me into the next one. It seems like because of your comfort as the outsider, the transition from, you know, doing film and creative work around media, and then this transition into academia, how did that journey happen? Like, what you're doing now, what was the path that led you here, and what opened that opportunity for you?
Well, academia might not be the right term because I don't teach.
Okay.
I have taught at university in the past, but I'm not faculty now. I'm staff. But I have an amazing job. I'm the senior hardware engineer for Computer Science College at a large university in New England. And so I basically tinker on hardware all day and spend most of my time trying to put systems in place that allow us to prepare for the future of computing science. That's a pretty cool mission. Like,
Yeah.
where will computing science be next year, 5 years, 10 years from now? Some of these things we can see, some of them we can't, of course. But I have a great group of colleagues, and everybody is sort of on board with that. So it's a pretty neat place to work.
That's really cool. So just so I can understand, is this like working with research labs that are building out custom hardware, or is this maybe it's a very broad scope? Does it include like everything from robotics to cloud computing? Like, how does that work?
Well, on the surface, it is essentially managing all the infrastructure for for faculty and research and graduate students and other staff in our college. This college is pretty big. Thousands of students graduate every year from just the computer science college. And some days that's really interesting. Some days that's a faculty member needs some help with. Not long ago, we did a project in the robotics lab here. Really interesting guys. They've got some fascinating projects, and they needed a system built where they could use motion tracking cameras to track their robots. So we got to work with them on that. Really cool side project when I first got here is somebody said, Thomas, we need you to clear out a room. And this room has been the storage closet for the robotics program for the past 40 years. And so there were robots in there we pulled one robot out from 1978. That is
Wow.
absolutely fascinating. So it's a pretty neat job. It changes every day. I also, of course, like to sort of build on the side outside of work, and this feeds well really into that. Allows me to be, allows me exposure to a lot of different areas of faculty focus. So machine learning or human-centered robotics or, a lot of these different things. And so I personally like being closer to an academic environment. I find it very inspiring to be, I guess you'd say I'm academic adjacent since I'm not teaching. Back in my past career, I worked as a adjunct professor at a couple universities. And so I really love teaching, but that was a different field. And
Oh,
that was in California.
that's cool. And what did you teach? What discipline was it?
I taught advanced documentary film production. I taught cinematography. I taught it was all film production related.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I feel like maybe one of your superpowers is that you can get scrappy when you need to. Like am I correct?
Well, what do you mean by that?
So, that you've mentioned words like improvise, taking on risk, wandering. There seems to be this like sort of love of exploration, but there's also sort of this grittiness of getting your hands dirty. I mean, at least this is what I'm hearing in the conversation that we're having.
Oh yeah, I could not ever have a job that didn't involve getting my hands dirty.
And I would imagine that's really valuable, right? When someone's academic looking at a computer science problem that they're working on, having someone like you on the team seems like it would be really valuable because you're like, oh yeah, you maybe have this sort of interdisciplinary view on problem solving.
Well, you make it sound it's very flattering to hear you say that. I don't know if I'm quite that talented, but that is the goal. I mean, it's not like faculty call me every day and say, Thomas, we need your help saving this project. I
Right.
don't know what we're going to do. My 10 PhD students are at a loss. Please come save it. No, it's nothing like that. They are, the research happening here is many levels above me. I just play a small role in supporting that. But, I do think it is intensely creative work.
Yeah.
I spent most of my life thinking that creative work was artistic work and that creative people were artists. Painters were creative, filmmakers were creative. And then at some point, I think I realized that creativity is really problem solving. And some of the best problem solvers I know, some of the most creative people I know are engineers. And if you had asked me, when I was in film school, I had a lot of friends who were engineers. Stanford was a big engineering school. And, it always felt like, or I always just assumed that our respective fields didn't have that much in common. I actually think they had an enormous amount in common. Engineers are intensely creative people.
Yeah. I've had the similar arc. It's really cool to see that you've had this journey as well. Cause I actually started, I got a BA in theater, with a focus in sound design. So it was,
Oh, how interesting.
and, I started in physics, but I was a terrible student, and almost failed out of college. And so I switched to something I knew I could make some A's in, but I ended up learning a lot in the process. Very, again, very artsy and creative and, I didn't realize how much theater was gonna have an impact on working in startups, which is what I do now, because you're on a budget, working cross-functionally with all these people. It didn't seem applicable, but then I realized in the tech industry, it's the same. It's creativity that's the through line of all of this, right? Deeply
That's
creative
right, yeah.
engineering work. Yeah.
I actually think that's a really important background, a theater background. And I was thinking about this the other day, actually, because I grew up thinking there's one kind of intelligence in the world, and that's the kind of intelligence you get from school and from books. You become smart, you're more intelligent. People who read less books are less intelligent. But the reality is that there's lots of different kinds of intelligence. There's social intelligence, there's emotional intelligence, there's I guess what you would call intuition, sort of street smarts. Um, there's, sort of book smarts, intellectual intelligence. And over time, my observation is that I think the kind of intelligence that probably leads to the most happiness in life is probably closer to social intelligence because it allows you to build communities that are stronger, larger, and stronger. When it comes to leadership, however, I really think that emotional intelligence is probably the most important kind. Your ability to empathize with things that you might not understand.
Yeah.
And I actually think that a background like yours in theater really prepares you so well for the social and primarily the emotional intelligence. So it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that worked for you in a startup environment. I think that makes total sense to me.
Yeah. I think what I've also appreciated over time, and again, I think this is something that it's clear in what you've been doing, is that willingness to dive deep and see how deep you can go. There's a real freedom in that. The discipline of really pushing through. It's led me on a very unconventional journey as well. Like I'm actually wrapping up a master's in computer science this semester at Georgia Tech.
No kidding. Oh, wow,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's one of those things where I never would have believed that I could have done that years ago, and it just I've been doing sort of like self motivated learning in the field, and then encouragement from my wife and from a few other core friends who said I think you should try, has brought me in that, and again, deeply creative work. No argument about it whatsoever. And now I can just do it with number theory or other weird cryptography things or understanding about time complexity. But I'm still like tinkering and thinking about weird stuff. It's really cool. So the I love that you've. Was there a moment when you knew eventually you're going to want a landing zone that was in academia and sort of staff, or did this position kind of show up in your lap and you're like, I think I could be a good fit for this? Like, how did you get there?
It's kind of a long story. We had been toying with the idea of moving back to the States for a number of years. And that visa process, my wife isn't a U.S. citizen. She's a citizen of Georgia, where we're living. And the visa process of immigrating for her to the U.S., of course, takes an enormous amount of time, years. And so we put that in motion. And then when it became clear that we were going to do this, that's a really big life change. I mean, I had been over there for 10 years. She grew up there. We had 2 kids. And then the question comes, okay, well, where do we go in the US and what do we do? And I wanted the family to live in New England somewhere. I'd never lived in New England before. My mother had lived there and I'd visited her, but the reason for that was because it was geographically closest to Eastern Europe, so we could travel back to see her family often. And also there were a couple places in New England that had what seemed to be very strong academic communities. And one of those areas is Western Massachusetts, where I live in the Amherst area. But I was also looking at some other places in New England. Looked at Burlington, Vermont, looked at Portland, Maine, looked at New Hampshire, looked at the Dartmouth area, looked at Boston, of course. And I had started to apply for tech-related jobs because our family had been running a electronics repair business for 3 or 4 years at that point already in Tbilisi, Georgia. And so I was looking for, mostly, I didn't think I would find a job that would be my, like a career building job. I thought it would just be kind of a transition job until we get set up and things like that. And The timing fit with a job search that they were doing here at the Computer Science College at UMass. And I came and met with them, and we clicked really well. It's a wonderful team. I feel very fortunate to be working with colleagues like this. And here I am.
Wow.
So that was a lot of luck. And also, I say a lot of luck. I'm a firm believer that 99% of what people call luck is not, in fact, luck. I think that it's, or put it a different way, we make our own luck. You know, I had been applying for jobs, for example, in this field. I knew I wanted to be near academia, so I'd been looking for jobs in academia that were like this, things like that. There is luck in life. Finding $20 on the street when you're walking down the street is luck. But I think a lot of what we very easily describe as luck is actually the result of work and vision and direction.
Fascinating. Again, I have a very similar view. I think a lot of this came from my mother, who has a similar philosophy, which she basically said, we work really hard so that we can be ready for these, what people think as lucky events, is that you're ready to receive something that is surprising, but you had to work really hard to be ready for it, right? Like,
That's right.
and the same thing with like finding the money on the ground. If you're not staring at your phone and you're just looking around you and observing what's there, you'll see the $20. But if you're not looking for it, you could have walked right past it, right? And
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
there are thousands of sort of micro behaviors that you can do to sort of influence the outcome of your life,
right.
that sort of change the odds more in favor of the goals that you have.
Yeah.
And some of these things, like not looking at your phone, most people wouldn't even think about that. But, you know, on a very basic level, if you want more engagement with your environment, with your community, then you need to make sure that your head is up and you're engaging. So I agree. I think your mother's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep seeing these patterns where I'm like looking back over time and being like, yeah, she knew that one. So technology. I loved I think one of the things I loved about that video that you made, like looping all the way back, was there, your device captured this sort of like optimism that I feel like, when we were imagining a future and we were imagining interacting with these devices, and there's like a lot of personality and there's a lot of physical interaction. Um, there's a lot of positives that we lay into that. I think technology also has a surprising way of like surprising and exacerbating negatives as well. And we also kind of internalize that. I'm seeing this with raising a child. My child's 8, and you're a little further on the journey. And so I was wondering, what challenges have you had with the relationship of technology and raising children?
Oh, wow. Well, I have a 15-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Okay, so you got both sides there. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I'm not going to lie. The war over screen time is real.
Yeah.
I want to limit the kids' screen time. They obviously, especially a teenager, want to be on their phones. I think every parent can relate to this in some way. I also see a lot of pluses for some of the time that my 6-year-old in particular spends online, because she spends it mostly watching content that is educational. Right now, she's really into sea creatures. And specifically, she's into sea creatures that live in the midnight zone,
Yes.
down below whatever thousands of feet of water that is where no light gets in. And I didn't teach her about the midnight zone. Her kindergarten didn't teach her about the midnight zone or cephalopods. And so it's kind of like, I grew up at a time where, first of all, there were very few educational shows on TV. There was 3-2-1 Contact, there was Cosmos, there were a couple others, but and you could only watch those when they came on once a week for 30 minutes. Imagine if they had been on, every day for an hour. That's quite an opportunity. So I think like a lot of parents, it's about finding balance,
Yeah.
right? I don't want them staring at the phone all the time, but at the same time, I do think there are benefits to that. And I understand that's a minority view. A lot of people wouldn't say that, but I'm actually a tech optimist. Um, and there's a lot of talk right now about AI, of course, and how it has the potential to sort of very quickly lead us into this dystopian future. And yes, that potential is there, of course. Um, but if we look back on the history of technological innovation in humankind, uh, almost every tech development there has been, almost every innovation there has been, with the possible exception of weapon systems, has been a net positive for humanity. And um, I mean, when radio came out, that was, oh my God, it's radio. It's going to, whatever, end the world. Television came out. Oh my God, it's television. It's going to end the world. Computers came out. Oh, what is this? Computers is very dangerous. Um, I actually think that we humans sort of have a way of um, making it work for us. I mean,
Yeah.
there's going to be a dark side, of course, to any technology. Like the internet, of course, has some very dark corners.
Right.
AI, of course, does have potential to cause a lot of damage. But I do feel I am optimistic that it will be a net positive for the human race.
That's cool. I love that perspective. I I think a lot about risk at work, and I think a lot about things that could go bad. And so I always try to, but at the same time, I'm actually an optimist about a lot of things. And so weighing those where I do like to think about where things could go wrong, but I think overall I'm in the same boat. I think that the net positive has been really we can't even predict what will come out of these things in the future. And I think we always think that things are getting worse. Like if you look at the oldest recorded history, the oldest stories, everyone is hand wringing about how things used to be better and things are getting worse and the whole world's falling apart. And we've been doing that since the beginning of recorded history.
Yeah,
It seems.
and that narrative is part of the human experience.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Um, that's that's really interesting. So, what is something that what's an emerging technology or something that maybe you've noticed recently that you're particularly excited about?
Well, this is not as exciting an answer as you probably would like, but I actually think that the how quickly things are moving with large language models, AI in general, but particularly large language models, is um, really exciting to think about what's possible. So I've started designing the next version of that Alexa-based robot,
Oh, cool.
and obviously I'm going to ditch the Amazon Alexa. I think what would have been really cool is if Alexa had, if they had implemented more AI a little bit faster, I'd probably keep it, but it has limitations. It's just a virtual assistant. So I'm going to ditch that and run some sort of language model locally on the device. And um, so I do a lot of research now into what is the use case I want for that? How can I train it? And essentially, what kind of personality can I give it? Because I think that is really important. I think that is so critical for human computer interaction. I think that um, I don't think we want, at least I don't want robots that look like humans. And the more human they look, the more it freaks me out. And I think a lot of people are like that. I think I would not want a human looking robot in my home. And I'm someone who likes to have new tech in my home. But I think that we do want something that has sort of the behavior of a personality, because I think that something between sort of a pet and a Muppet,
Fascinating.
and I think that is I think when we can create a relationship like that, I think that is when we can really unlock all of these levels of what that tech can do for us as humans on a day-to-day basis in our homes. And so that's really what I'm focusing on now is creating something that is this will probably be air gapped. So I don't want it communicating with some sort of big platform like ChatGPT. And I can train it on to behave kind of the way that I want it to interact with other people. I want it to be curious, for example. Well, you're like, "Oh, okay, a machine can't be curious." Well, not curious in the way that humans are. Yeah, I agree with that, but I do think that there's room for that.
That's cool. I hadn't thought about the idea of wanting something. It made me almost think of like I would imagine like a Studio Ghibli film character, how cool that would
Right.
be to actually have in the real world, and, some kind of unique personality that's fascinating. I love this. So I guess, is there anything surprising that's come out of large language models that concerns you, if we're not careful?
AI, there's tremendous potential to do harm with AI if it's, um, I don't want to use the word regulated, but if we're not careful, I guess. And so that risk is real. I don't want to make it sound like it's overblown. That risk is real, but I think it's manageable.
Yeah.
Um, the challenge that I have with AI is with let's just take a part of AI. Let's just take language models. The challenge that I have is that things are moving so quickly in that space that it's um it's very difficult to sort of keep a finger on it, and then it's very difficult to start a long-term project with it because next month uh, we've already moved so far that you're asking yourself, do I need to pivot and stop using the platform I'm using and putting this new one? And it's I mean, I don't think I've ever seen tech move quite so quickly. Um, so
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. It's also a big unknown where this is going. And um,
There was a
my knee jerk reaction is again optimism, but sure, it has to be. There there are dangers that we have to keep an eye on. I think.
Yeah, that and earlier you mentioned, you know, air gap being part of your design. Um, that's actually one of the more concerning areas to me in large language models is not even the core tech itself. It's the fact that we are so excited to interact with these tools that we've really abandoned a lot of data sovereignty and data privacy very quickly. A large audience of people are putting very intimate details or asking very intimate questions or even uploading, you know, PDFs that might have been internal business documents or something to this large language model that retains the right to keep that data. you know,
Right.
um, it's interesting. I think there's some societal norms and like regulatory pieces around that, mostly on like who gets to control the data. What is this allowed to be in future training data sets and these other kind of things that we haven't ironed out yet. Um,
Right. I mean, I do think that the pessimism about these developments is valuable,
mhm.
because that is what is going to help us find the balance and make sure that it isn't abused the way it could be, things like that. So I do think there's a role for lack of a better term, tech pessimists or
Right.
all the doom and gloom. I think that even though sometimes it's frustrating to hear, I do think that's a valuable discourse. Um, what's important is that there is a discourse. What's important is that there are ideas being worked through and debated and talked about even at the congressional level. So if we weren't having those conversations, I would be pretty concerned.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it it is. It's interesting. Anytime we are kind of pushing the boundaries about how we can think about stuff, it's not the same as like how the physics community does things, but there's a common thread, I think, which is that in physics everything has to be very they have like 6 sigma, these like really strict criteria of signal versus noise of now that especially that they're like trying to discover new particles or discovering the behaviors of certain things. And so I guess what we'd call in tech, we call that pessimism, but really it's this sort of like deep skepticism of, is my claim correct? Like,
Right.
can I build a framework on top of this and rely on the truthfulness of this, foundational principle? And the standards should be high, right? Like when we ask
They
these,
should be high.
yeah,
They have to be high.
yep,
I mean, science is if scientific pursuit is healthy, then we need a lot of skeptics.
yes,
And because it's funny you brought up physics because I just read this book. I'm gonna butcher the title. I think it was 12 Problems We Don't Understand or 12 Things We Don't Understand About the World or something like that. A professor was throwing it out here and I saw it. I picked it up and it turned out to be a really great book. And he was talking about, he goes through and talks about a number of scientific ideas. It's essentially a story about skepticism and scientific results and, how much we really don't know. And I, I absolutely am a big believer in having um, a very robust community of skeptics, particularly in academic communities. Um, I think it's important
yeah, that's really great.
because I mean, science works cumulatively, right? Everything builds on what came before it. So if you allow a weak link in that evolution to take place of our scientific understanding, and you build for years scientific concepts on that weak link, um, then what if we, for example, just accepted that uh, the value for gravity was what Newton said it was, and nobody put it to the test or anything, and we built a bunch of ideas on it, and then we found out that he was wrong about that. Then like all of that, an insane amount of scientific effort and research would be compromised. So I think it's skeptics can be really frustrating when you're the one doing the innovation
Right.
because you're like, I know it's right. Why do you need to see like another data set? I just gave you 50 of them. But if you want your conclusions to be part of the larger scientific community, which they will be if you're a scientist, we have to have that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how important framing is, right? The framing, because it'll influence an entire generation of physics research, right? And if we if we go off on the wrong tangent or you know, don't quite understand a fundamental, it could really get twisted up or lead to a bunch of, failed experiments in careers that are, kind of tangled up in a sloppy foundational piece.
That's right.
Yeah. Um, okay, so we've talked about physics, we've talked about uh, media. I I think that there's also a through line here of this sort of intersectionality, this intersection of uh, doing creative work in that perspective. Uh, Tell me about how your various backgrounds, how you think that they've influenced you where you are right now.
Ooh. Well, one thing that I've only realized really recently is um, that if you want to do work that impacts your community or the larger community out there, um, it's it's not enough to be able to do good work because um, it's just not gonna, most of the time, that news, whatever you were doing, isn't gonna travel. What's really important is that you do good work and you're able to tell the story of that work really well. And usually telling the story of your work, if you're working in something that's has a lot of sort of heavy concepts or it's complex, let's say it's complex work. Telling a good story means that you're able to reduce a lot of complex ideas and complex research into simple ideas and simple stories. And I actually think that all of us who, or us, I don't know if I can put myself in that category, but anybody who is doing important work, um, should not lose sight of how important it is to be able to talk about that work. And let me just give you an example. Um, I sit in on a lot of lectures here at the university, guest lectures, some really impressive computer scientists in general, not just in computer science. And usually I'll look at some of their publications before they speak, to kind of get a background. Because I'm not a student here. I'm not even in that field. So I'd be able to follow them. I'd like to be able to know what they're talking about. And my impression is that in a lot of cases, these are people doing very important work, of great importance to our evolution as humans. And a lot of the time, it is very difficult to follow the presentation of that work. And either it's aimed at an audience that is only researchers in that very specific subfield, or it's even something as simple as a presentation with slides, and the slides aren't, from a visual design standpoint, it's very difficult to follow them. And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because I've certainly been guilty of doing a lot of this myself over the years. But I do think that we have a duty, if you see your work as something you would like to be part of a larger conversation, we have a duty to work towards presenting that work in a more elegant way. Not more elegant, in an elegant way, let's say.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that makes perfect sense. And I think probably any of us can think of, science communicators or folks who do educational content who are masters at that, right? They do just an amazing, I think PBS Spacetime, Veritasium, these other YouTube channels where you're like, wow.
Those guys are amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
really. And it's next level, right? I mean, I'm sure they have
Khan Academy,
yes,
fantastic.
yes, exactly. And I have a deep appreciation for that because I'm like, it's hard, it's difficult to make things feel simple.
It's insanely difficult.
Right.
And I imagine if you're working on quantum physics, it's orders of magnitude more difficult.
Right. Right. Because you can't.
But it is important.
Right. Most people can't just talk about hypercubes or
Right.
non-Euclidean space or something on a casual conversation. So yeah. Oh, this is fascinating. I love this. I'm trying to think if somebody, let's say we have someone who's been along on the journey for this whole conversation. Let's say they want to find a way to wander more or find a way to take more calculated risks or set themselves up to feel lucky. Are there any books or any other sort of material that you would recommend someone who's like beginning this journey or wants to get inspired?
Well, if we open that question up a little bit more, and to also include, charting your own path, for example.
Yes, sure.
And how you respond to adversity, and how you respond to adversity when you're charting your own path, when you don't have a whole industry behind you of established norms and things like that. There is a series of books that I have read several times and I keep coming back to when I'm sort of at a point where I'm struggling either with a project or with a larger question in professional development, career development, things like that. And it's a little bit unusual, I think, for the question at hand, but I really love it. And that is Patrick O'Brien's series of novels about Captain Aubrey, who was a ship captain for the UK during the Napoleonic Wars. And you might know this series of books because they condensed 20 books into one movie called Master and Commander. Came out about 20 years ago, I think.
Oh, wow.
But the books as a series are phenomenal. And not just from an escapism perspective, but in each of these books, Captain Aubrey is the captain of a ship that has been tasked with going to the other side of the world. This is before we really had a full map of the world. And there's exploration, there's meeting enemies, there's leadership, and it might sound crazy, Nathan, but I think there's a lot to learn from those books about charting your own course
Fascinating.
and about creative leadership. And yeah, I find myself coming back to them time and again.
I have not read those books. I'll be adding these to my list on my side. So
it's very different probably than what a lot of people would answer that question with.
I love that
because it's not a book explicitly about charting your own path or something like that. But
I will
the
say
metaphor,
it's consistent with this interview that we've had today. I think, which I love. To me,
Right.
finding those beautiful, the patterns, right? There's these sort of meta patterns that you can find in life.
right?
And if we're all looking in the same places, we're never going to see a way to be inspired. And I think it's cool that you found inspiration here.
What would you
awesome.
suggest?
Ooh. Oh, that's great. That's a great question. This one, it gets a little woo-woo, I think. Jonathan Livingston Seagull was a book that I read as a kid, but I've read it several times. And have you ever read this? Are you familiar?
No.
So it's about a seagull who isn't like the other seagulls and sort of charters his own course in life and kind of becomes obsessed with learning to fly more efficiently and dive deeper into the water. And then he ends up meeting these other seagulls who've like transcended to higher forms of seagullness.
Oh wow, I love this.
It's a very peculiar book, but it's really fun. It's very like 70s metaphysics kind of, strange, but it's something that I've come back to a couple of times. I think it's kind of got a beautiful, story to it, but yeah.
Oh, I like it already. I'm going to check that out immediately.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah. I think
there's a beautiful, actually, since you brought up birds, there's a beautiful Samsung television advertising spot that came out about 10 years ago that has a flock of, I don't know if you call ostrich, what do you call a group of ostriches?
Ooh,
It's not a flock, is it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway,
yeah.
There's a group of ostriches in sort of what I took to be the Australian outback somewhere. And one of them wanders up to a house and somehow gets tangled up into a VR headset that is showing it flight, like clouds passing by. And ostriches can't fly. And it spends sort of the next 12 hours dreaming about that. And all the other ostriches kind of leave it alone. And eventually it flies. And if you Google Samsung ostrich commercial, you'll see it. And it's a short television spot. It's not a life-changing movie or anything, but I actually think first of all, it's brilliantly made, exceptionally well made. And that actually touches on a lot of the things that we've talked about in this discussion, which I've really enjoyed, by the way.
Yeah, me as well. And this has been fantastic. And I'll make sure in the show notes to put links to the things that we've discussed today.
Oh, great.
I want to give people an opportunity to find your what's a good way to see what you're up to and follow you.
Well, there's a website. Probably the best way is actually the YouTube channel. You could link right to that, since we talked a lot about that particular video, you could link right to the video. And from there, they can probably find the rest of me online, I guess.
That's awesome.
I try to put my projects on the website, but I only put the bigger projects. And so the website's kind of a slowly evolving thing, whereas YouTube is a little more nimble. I
That's cool.
guess.
This has been a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan. I thought it was great, and look forward to chatting more in the future.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.